The idea of giving students learning intentions has really caught on in education over the last 20 years. And obviously, it's important that students know where they're going. I'm quite embarrassed by how many years I spent teaching without telling my students where we were going. And it's kind of obvious, really. If the students know where we're headed, we have more chance of arriving at the destination. But in many places, this has become an orthodoxy where the teacher writes the learning intentions on a board and the students copy it into their books. And the problem is, there's not much evidence that that actually does any good. So I think we need to think about learning intentions in a much more holistic way, a deeper way, and think about what job are those learning intentions really doing. So because learning is a long-term change in what students can do, you can't judge learning in the moment. We talk about we are learning to do things. The other day I needed to repair a tap in my home in Florida, and American taps are different from British taps, so I watched a YouTube video and I learned how to do it. Except I didn't. I said to my wife, I learned how to do it by watching a YouTube video. But that's not a really good use of the word learn, because if I needed to do it again, I would have to watch the video again. I didn't learn it. I followed a set of instructions. And that's why this distinction that psychologists draw between learning and performance is so important. Learning is a long-term change in what you can do. Performance is how well you do on a particular learning task. And what the research has shown over the last 50 years is that you can have learning without performance. Students can get better at something without showing you they can get better. And students can get better at a task without necessarily committing it to long-term memory. So that creates a problem for the teacher. You design the lesson to produce a certain amount of learning, so the learning intentions are important for planning the lesson, but the success criteria help you decide, did the lesson go according to plan? So I think we need both learning intentions and success criteria. Learning intentions are primarily useful for teachers because you need learning intentions to plan a lesson. If you don't know what it is you want your students to get better at, then designing lessons is really difficult. But in the lesson, you can't judge learning in the lesson because learning is a long-term change in what students can do. What you can do is decide, did the lesson go according to plan? And that's where success criteria come in. They're a kind of, I'll be happy if. So there are at least 4 ways in which you can use success criteria. The first is as limitations on what's expected. I'll be happy if students can factorize quadratic expressions where the quadratic component has a unitary coefficient. Not all of them, just some of them. I'll be happy if the students can take what they've learned in one context and apply it in a different context. Like, we're learning to write instructions on changing a bicycle tire. Well, you're not really that interested in bicycle tires. The purpose of the activity is developing a capacity to write instructions. So the success criterion might be, I'll be happy if they can apply what they've just learned in changing a bicycle tire to a different context, like making a sandwich. The third way in which success criteria can be helpful is to actually tell students what you're looking for. That, for example, in English literature, you might be looking for writing that is sustained and concise. And you tell students what good work looks like. The danger is that becomes so specific that it actually becomes a checklist that improves the work but does not improve the learner. For example, many science teachers give their students checklists for a laboratory report. And they tell the students exactly what needs to be there for the laboratory report. My point is, if the students are still relying on the checklist 3 years later, they haven't really learned how to write a lab report. The checklist is improving the work, it's not improving the student. So when we give students guidance on what good work looks like, there's a difficult balance to steer. We need to be supportive enough that it guides the students, but it mustn't be so supportive that it tells the students exactly what to do, because then we'll just improve the work, but not improve the student.